Welcome to Connect, Curate, Create, where we're on a journey through the arts and creative industries. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Butcher. If you're anything like me, you love learning about art and creativity. In each episode, I ask artists and creatives how they navigate life, work, and more besides. They generously share their stories and offer invaluable insights that you and I can put into action. As the author of Creative Work Beyond Precarity, I blend my mission to give artists a fair go with my academic smarts, to ask the questions that draw out lessons we can all learn from.
I never set out to be an artist. I never set out to be a photographer. That wasn't my life plan at all. And I just kept doing it and went to a gig one night and took photos. I went, geez, this is so much fun. And this brings two of my great loves together. I could do this. Maybe I should just keep doing it. I think it's just doing everything for the first time. And you do that a lot in photography. You don't sit at a desk and do the same thing every day. You're going into new environments with new people, a new dynamic. Even when you're going with the same people in the same kind of event, but it's a year later, everything is different and you're different. And I do really enjoy actually going back to things like, been doing, Victoria's Pride March for a decade or whatever. And every year you go back and you're like, oh, I feel different about this now because I'm a different person. When you're in the pit and there's 9 photographers all pushing and shoving and kicking off and taking 500 photos of the same thing, just stop for a moment and stand there and have a look around you, enjoy it and go, oh my God, how cool is this, or feel it, just feel and have a look at the audience and have fun with it, take that moment and remember it.
In this episode, I talk with Suzanne Phoenix, a photographer based in Warburton, Victoria. Suzanne shares how and why she makes photographs. She offers keen insights into a unique approach to photography, how generosity and openness can lead to unique opportunities, and reveals how to get the shot nobody else can. Be sure to check out the show notes for highlights and links that you can use to shape your own journey. And if you enjoy this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about Connect, Curate, Create. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am here with Suzanne Phoenix, the artist based in Warburton. Suzanne, hi.
Hi, Tim. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, so another remote recording. We're interstate. I'm here in Tassie. Suzanne's in Victoria. Suzanne, for those of us who aren't familiar with your practice, perhaps you could share with us what it involves, what it is you do.
Sure. I think for a long time, people asking me what my creative practice is one of the hardest questions I find to answer. And I'm not really, never just rolls off the tongue for me. And I said the other day to my partner, I don't know what to say to that question. And she said, well, you just carry your camera everywhere. You photograph every day and the camera's extension of your arm. And I work, I view the world photographically and I want to document it. I want to document people and moments. And I think photography is like proof of things for me. And it is really how I communicate with the world. Do you want me to talk more about what I photograph, I suppose, maybe?
If you would like to, yeah, please do.
Sure. I photograph lots of things, and when people ask, I say mostly I do a lot of Melbourne music scene, live stuff, and band shoots and music festivals, lots of queer performance and sort of queer event photography. And yeah, have a big love of portraiture. I'm more of a candid photographer, I suppose. I like capturing moments, and the posed work is less of what I do, but they all have a place, I think. And I suppose the other thing, I do a lot of large scale art projects, I suppose you'd call them. Yeah, it seems to have happened a long time over the last 10 years in different forms. I do a project for International Women's Day every year, which I've done for 13 years, and I ask cis and trans women and gender diverse people about what International Women's Day means to them. And we create a portrait and they do a written response. A lot of those people are from, nearly all from Melbourne and Warburton, and they have a lot of those people are in the music industry and as someone's pointed out to me this year, very heavily queer, apparently. Yep. Yeah, and I've done lots of projects where I involve lots of community, creating photos and then providing words along the side. And there's a whole lot of iterations, I suppose, of different projects I've created over the years, and that comes from my background, I think, in community development. So I do see the way I photograph has a lot to do with community development work. Yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps we could talk more about that later. I suppose like a year ago we met for the first time. It was a book fair in Naarm, and it was my first book fair where I had a table, and I took along one little zine, and there was you at the other end of the book fair with stacks and stacks of books, and it just blew me away just looking at your work and talking to you about your work. And your International Women's Day books were there from previous years, and you gave me a couple, and I treasure them. You know, it's the portraits in there are really, you know, so not just photographically, but in terms of people's stories and, you know, their lived experience. It really these things really come through. And you've just completed this year's project, am I right?
Yeah, that's right. We probably just did the wrap up last week because there was it's the 8th of March. It's a tricky one because kind of once the day is done, everything's really done. But there was posters all around Melbourne, and there was big billboards on Bakehouse Studios on Punt Road there. Part of their art project. So they were up until just a week or so ago. Yeah, but this year we had 26 artists in it, which was the biggest year of recent times where there's been a publication as a publication as well. It's a lot of people to navigate. And so, but I'm so lucky if how many people say yes. And yeah, I'd say this year was one of the best. Every year it gets better. Every year there's challenges and stresses. You can just never predict, but this year was certainly one of the best years.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess, 26 participants sort of is indicative of your work ethic. As you said, you've always got a camera on your shoulder. And when I was in Victoria back in January this year, and you invited me over for lunch, and you showed me around Warburton. I'd never been before, and let's go and have a look at this. And then there was a door open, and we went in, and you said, do you want to go and get your camera? I said, no, it's fine. And you were just snapping away, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think that you get that from your Photos Punctuate My Life Instagram. It's very clear. But then what you also revealed to me that day is that's not your only Instagram account. Photographically as well, so there's a whole lot of work that you're putting out there into the world, and constantly making and putting it out into the world. So, I mean, what does that speak to in terms of your work ethic? It's where does this come from?
I'd say it comes from my what's the word? It's just a family thing when you're a workaholic, and that's been instilled in me from a really young age. And so no matter what you're doing, but I think also part of me feels like I could have started earlier. I mean, I feel like I've been photographing my whole life, but not very well. But now it feels like I it always felt like there wasn't enough time. So I really want to do as much work as I possibly can, and things change really quickly as well. So that thing of wanting to be in places is a hard balance to strike, because there's so many things to go and experience. And I also where I'm, have quite an addictive personality, so I'm just addicted to photography as well. So, they are probably not necessarily two great qualities of workaholism and addiction, but they're part of my being, part of my makeup.
Yeah, of course, and I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to what you're saying as well. I myself, I guess for me, I've only recently rediscovered my photographic practice. I've always carried a camera, but never really considered myself a photographer. And what I get addicted to are other things. I'm jack of all trades and a master of none. And so it's so for me, I draw huge inspiration from someone like you who, has this love of photography and can't let it go. So I think there's a lot for someone like me to learn from you. Yeah. So, where did it? I mean, what do you remember when you got your first camera or made your first photograph? Is there some sort of a key moment back in the past when where it all came from?
Yeah, I think I actually just did this submission yesterday for something, and it talks about what's your, when did your photography journey start? And I kind of write, well, it started, my earliest memories when I was about 4. And so photography and photos have always been a really important part of my experience. I suppose it was really important to my, to my father, and really important to my nana as well. So I remember getting my first camera, and I was less than 10, and, I don't have one of those great stories which lots of people have about they got their beautiful box brownie from someone and they went on to make these amazing photos. I just had a crappy plastic camera from Kmart. It was red, and, but you did what you could do with it. And, there's still photos I kind of love from that day, and they do have a really simplistic aesthetic that I think you can't ever create once you get older and a bit more experienced and you want things to look better. I think I've gone on track here, sorry.
No, not at all, not at all.
Okay.
No, because it's the magic of it, right? It's the magic. So many photographers talk about the first time they saw a print in the darkroom. I mean, that never happened to me. But like you, I remember my first camera, and the fact that you're 4 years old, you remember, a red camera. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I remember getting in trouble when I did something to somebody's photos, which I thought was a really nice thing, and I just got in so much trouble. And I thought I was doing such a good thing, and then a kind thing, and then I got in so much trouble. And I think that really instilled into me how important photos are. Because if you had a copy of a print, you might have the negative somewhere, but unlikely for it to exist anywhere else. Whereas now with digital, you can have, so many multiple copies, whatever. But that importance of a photograph was really instilled in me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and we come from a similar time, and it is that we took less photographs back in the day. When it was on film, it wasn't necessarily the cost, but it was the process. And so for ordinary everyday people to make photographs, they were often in special occasions, and so there weren't that many photographs of ourselves.
Yeah, it's true. My nana, as I tell people, she just loved taking photos, but she was so bad at it. And but I love those photos now, because you couldn't set out to make photos like she made. Like, there are so many that they're on a tilt, there's a finger over it, she's completely missed the subject, but I love those photos so much. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. And so, I mean, how does that, to think forward to today and the volume of photographs and the quality of photographs that you make? I mean, that's the thing is like, you don't seem to have a trade-off between quality and quantity. You make lots of great photographs, and you're always putting great work out there. So how does that sort of play into your practice today? Everyone has different views, and it's fascinating how other photographers look at each other's work and what they do. And everyone's, lots of people are different. And if you're not doing it a set way, I think there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of critique. And, I've certainly heard people talk about other photographers saying, they just post too much and, no, they're not getting enough likes and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just got really comfortable now that that's actually just part of my process. So my process includes putting that out there. And it's funny because if I don't kind of share them as they happen, it's a really logical process for me and it works for me. But when things because of International Women's Day, I was sort of just posting International Women's Day and trying just to focus on that. There's all this backlog of things that I haven't shared, but it's really hard for me to now pick those up and slot them in. For some reason it doesn't quite work so well for me. But I'm just really comfortable that it's part of my process. And it's an online portfolio that you have that you get to curate yourself. And, essentially it's free other than your time and whatever else people might take out of that. But you do have control over that. And as I said, I think it's part of how I communicate with the world. And I don't know, just a lot of connections happen through those online mediums or those online platforms. And I've made lots of friends and connections through that process.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, yeah. So that look, again, it's something that others might struggle with. Again, myself, so I've only put my work out into the world, or photographs out into the world in very recent years, and it took a while to overcome those barriers to that. And all the blockages I'd created for myself, So I think that there are many of us out there who can draw inspiration from someone like yourself, for sure. Just by seeing what you do. You said about community before, and you just said about making connections on Instagram. Again, if I can refer back to that 24 hours I was in Warburton, and I got so much out of that because I remember we went for lunch, and your friend who works at the cafe, you introduced us, and you told me the story of take their photograph and then their feedback in regard to that. I mean, one of the things I got is very much that in and around that where you live, everybody knows you, and everybody knows you as the photographer. It's a wonderful thing.
I'm sure it's a double-edged sword, but yes, I do know a lot of people through photography, and realistically, without photography, there's no way my life would look like what it looks like. It's a way to connect with people that is really hard to replicate, I find. Yeah.
Yeah, and it, for me, it's that response that you get from them as well, and I think that's what shines through in your portraits. You've recently been sharing on Instagram a punk band that's been touring from Greece or somewhere in Europe, and just how for me how I can see how they're connecting with you. Through the lens, through whatever it is you're doing with them, it's really again, I'd love to be able to do that sort of thing myself. So, have you got any tips for how?
Oh, well, one of the things I'd say is if you don't ask, you never know. So, with them, there was a slight connection. Actually, there's probably. I don't even know how the connection happened before they arrived, but we'd managed to connect before they arrived. And now I see all the people who are connected with them in Melbourne, and I see all those people I know. And so someone might have said, you maybe should connect with Suzanne, or they just saw a photo had taken of another band that they kind of liked and liked my style, and had connected. Because I was like, why is this band from Greece connecting with me? I don't really get this. Anyway, and they just communicate also. So they said to me before they arrived they were coming and let me know which gig I wanted to come to or whatever. And so I managed to get to one of the gigs, and it was great. And then afterwards, so I said, they're pretty popular now. Like there's like every man and their dog wants to photograph them right now. because there's quite a vibe. So, but I was like, oh, well, just ask anyway. So I just sent a message and said, would you be up for a band, some portraits or, come and photograph the band? And they said yes. And I went to their house and they were staying, and it was just phenomenal. And, the family home that had been in the family for decades and decades. I was like worried I was going to get there. It's going to be some fancy Airbnb. I'm like, what am I going to walk into? Like, what am I going to have to work with? Couldn't have asked for more. And just had the most fun with them. And so the thing is, if you don't ask, you never know. And I think I kind of feel like those photos will maybe be important one day, because it was their first big tour, and no one else got those photos. And also, even if other people came and did shoots with them, which I'm sure they did, we had the best time, and I had so much fun. And I think those photos for me just show, because they're a serious punk rock band, but there's so many photos of them just laughing, which is not necessarily they want to share with the world, but made me pretty happy. So it's just it's fun. It's fun, and if you just don't know if you don't ask, yeah.
And I suppose something. Yeah, you're having so much fun. You've made the opportunity for yourself, and it's not necessarily. You said maybe one day they'll be important, but you didn't talk about money in any way. So it's not about the commercial gain at all, So yeah, how what does that mean to you? If I were to put that to you?
Yeah, it's So there's a few things I'd say. Not a lot of money involved in the music industry in Melbourne. You never go into it thinking you're going to make any money, whether you're a muso or you're a photographer or any of the other aspects of music. But I suppose it does apply to a lot of work that I do. Is I think I never set out to be an artist. I never set out to be a photographer. That wasn't my life plan at all. And I just kept doing it and went to a gig one night and took photos. And went, geez, this is so much fun. And this brings two of my great loves together. I could do this. Maybe I should just keep doing it. Just go to gigs and take photos. And that's kind of where it started as far as the music stuff goes. But I think it's... I don't know. I don't want to say for people to do work for free, but it really is a hard thing to navigate. But that's kind of how I started out, and now I make a living from photography and art, and but I still do lots of things I don't get paid for, and I'm fine with that, to be honest. Money changes things. It changes the dynamic. It changes the expectations. I think we should be paid for what we do, absolutely. But also when things are really at the beginning and they're in the emerging stage, there's a lot of most of the people in that art don't have any money, whichever side you're looking at. I don't know if I'm saying the right things right now, but that's kind of my perspective, and just it applies to a lot of what I do. I go and do the things that I'm really passionate about, that I'm going to have a lot of fun in, that I get an experience out of. And in the end of the day, I have those photos and no one else does, and they're mine. And there's also a freedom in not getting paid for work. Don't know if it's okay to say that, but there is, because they're mine. They're no one else's. They can't, there's a whole other issue about stuff getting used online without consent. Absolutely, that's a whole other world to try and navigate. But I do have those photos, and there's a real freedom in that, and going in without expectations as well. And there's a whole thing too about when you are paid to do a job, that person who's paying you has things you have to deliver for them. And a lot of the time I'm not really interested in those things. I don't care about branding in an event. I don't care about, a whole lot of things I just don't care about, but I have to get, if I shoot a festival or I shoot an event, there's particular things they want. So you get to a place, I think, where you can navigate doing the work you want to do in a scenario and the work you have to get. But, if you didn't have to follow your shoot list or that's a lot more fun, really, isn't it? And how do you find that balance between doing what you're good at, which is, not necessarily what it is that you're getting paid to do? But that's a balance to try and strike. And I think I'm a lot better. I'm certainly a lot better at that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, that's, that's what drives me. I wrote a book about it. I've founded a company around the idea that we should be valuing artists' work more. So it is a huge tension, and it is so complex, this idea that, do the work you love, you're probably going to have to do some of it for free. But how do we as artists retain what's valuable in there, so that then if there's an opportunity to trade it in some way, or to benefit from it, it's you who's benefiting and not others.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It is. And so I think in terms of sort of the lessons you've learned along the way as you've taken on different projects, how do those opportunities for projects come along, and how do you make the most of them? Besides just having fun, do you have a process that you follow in, and what do those opportunities bring? How do you make those opportunities, or do they just find you?
I definitely make a lot of opportunities. Yeah, I think there's a lot of luck involved, I suppose, in life, I think, and what's the word? Sort of that serendipity. But also, if I sat at home and never left the house and never talked to anyone, nothing would happen. So it is about getting, for me anyway, that's how my life works, get out, be part of stuff, talk to people, meet people, do stuff, make photos. Opportunities come from that. I think in most of my working career outside of photography, when I've started jobs and I had to talk about my career and where I got to, how I got to there and stuff, I sort of went through and talked about all the jobs the jobs I've done and how I got there. And a lot of it came down to people believing in me and people giving me an opportunity. I still don't really even know how or why, other than that's just sort of how people react to me. And there's a lot of amazing people in my career who've given me jobs without any proof that I could do it at all, or without any go, oh, well, you can do that project, Suzanne. I've never done anything like that before. There's nothing to say I can do that, but people just believe in me. And maybe it's that attitude of, people can trust you that you will make things happen, and you will, and you're a good, I don't know, you're a good person, you're professional, you can be relied on, you get stuff done, and you'll do it with good ethics, and, it'll make it happen in a way that they can be really comfortable and proud of. And if there's issues along the way, that you'll raise them. You won't just keep, pushing through. And I suppose, so, I think I certainly have a lot of ideas, and nearly all the projects that sort of big projects that I've done are all come from me. I do have a lot of friends that I, talk to more about, well, I've got all these ideas. What do you reckon is the best one? Or what do you reckon I could do with that? And even when my friends tell me they're not great ideas, or you shouldn't do that, that's just too big, or it's, crazy, I just do it anyway. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of, you got too many things, Suzanne, just slow down. I'm tired just watching you. I get that a lot. But opportunities, I think, they happen, but a lot of, for me, is making them happen. Yeah. No, again, it's sage advice for so many people who
wonder how do you make this happen? And there is no substitute for hard work. So as a hard worker, if you weren't doing the photography now, what would you be doing instead?
I don't know. I've done many things in my life. I've done lots of sorts of jobs, and I don't know that I think I'll be a photographer the rest of my life, but I really don't, I think hopefully I still have quite a bit of my life to live. I don't know what else I might do. I think photography is a nice little box, and it's like that frame, isn't it? You can sit inside that photography little frame and be that, and you can be that for a long time. I think crossing over into being an artist more broad, outside of that is a bit of a transition for a lot of people, and I think it is a transition for me. I also found, I suppose, in lockdown times, I wanted to do collage for a long time, and I'd been collecting books for a long time to do handcut collage, and I in lockdown had opportunity had the time to actually make that happen. And what I really loved of it is I probably would say, as a photographer who does, when we do lots of events and music and stuff like that, you are on a hamster wheel of photography. You are photo edit, get them out, photo edit, get them out. It never stops, really. It's really hard to get off that hamster wheel. And I think it can become all-consuming, and it's very hard to do other things. So COVID, because I couldn't do many things, although I still did a lot of things, but just gave me a chance to do collage, and I loved that it was, one, not looking at a screen. I'm not sitting in front of a computer doing something sort of with your hands about paper rather than full kind of digital things. Can't remember what the question was now, but what would I be doing? Yeah, so I don't know. I kind of entertain the idea that maybe I could do another art form, which it kind of feels quite vulnerable. And as a kid, I was given the opportunity to go to every type of class you can imagine, from jazz ballet to drawing to tennis to whatever. I was terrible at all of them. And now I'm like, maybe I could try, I don't know, sculpting or painting. I don't know, that they seem so beyond my reach, but maybe.
Never say never. Look, I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Sort of you worked within the constraints that you had in lockdown, and it actually took you to another passion in your life and something you'd always wanted to try. So there's always opportunity to extend our practice, and I think that's, rather than, just boxing myself in as a photographer, thinking of myself as an artist is really important to me, because actually I do question how good my photography is, and actually I wonder whether my printing's better than my photography. So it's sort of like same process, just different roles in the process, or different ways, different perspectives on the same process. So there's to always be seeing ways to open up rather than close down what you do is going to that's always going to be far more enriching, I think, personally. Yeah. But I mean, if I were to ask you about challenges you've faced along the way, so we've talked a lot about opportunity, but if we were to look at the other side of this, have you had particular challenges other than lockdown, things that you faced along the way, and how have you overcome them?
While lockdown was a challenge, it was a huge opportunity for me. And I think, I'd just say, I think having constraints and having, I think sometimes I flourish best when it's harder and you have limitations, and then you go, oh, well, I have to get creative. I have to find out a different way to do things. So in that lockdown time, I think I did 6 self-publications, which I'd never done before. And it's, I maybe I'm just in a very positive state of mind at the moment, but because I'm sure I've no doubt there's challenges all the time. But when I think about this, mostly I think about the biggest challenges, and I don't really like the term, but that imposter syndrome thing is really around confidence and, whether I'm good enough at what I do to be even be in the mix. And every time I do something for the first time, there's a real challenge. So the first time I got in the pit at a gig, it was a really big, very famous band, and I had a major panic attack on the, beforehand on the way to the venue. Yeah, I ended up sitting on the side of the street against a wall, having a panic attack because I was terrified. I was terrified that I wasn't good enough and I was going to mess up and all those things. You have these amazing opportunities, but you still have to get through it. And people were really kind to me and checked on me. And when I got there, the person who I was actually photographing for, I met him for the first time, and I wasn't in a great way. And he was like, "It's fine. Like, what's the worst thing you're going to do, Suzanne?" I'm like, "Probably vomit." And he said, "Oh, the band will love that." That's the worst thing can happen to you. So I think, I don't know if that's imposter syndrome. I think it's just doing everything for the first time, and you do that a lot in photography. You don't sit at a desk and do the same thing every day. You're going into new environments with new people, a new dynamic. Even when you're going with the same people in the same kind of event, but it's a year later, everything is different and you're different. And I do really enjoy actually going back to things like, been doing, Victoria's Pride March for a decade or whatever. And every year you go back and you're like, oh, I feel different about this now because I'm a different person. And that's a really interesting way to look at yourself, I think. So imposter syndrome, confidence, the other one that, probably not, I don't know, is I hate using a flash. It's my fear of the flash. And honestly, that's probably one of my biggest challenges. And really it's meant there's a lot of work I don't do or I've missed out on or I've said no to because I don't want to use a flash. I really like natural light and available light, but it's a whole different thing that's captured and often not what people want when they book you for something.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, fear of the flash. Yeah. No, that's an interesting one. Yeah. I suppose for me, I haven't had a lot of practice with it. And so I do rely on on available light. I don't use artificial light, but would that be the same for you? You've tried it or you just don't want to try it?
Oh, I just avoid it. I'd use it now. So I bought a proper flash after I did a photo shoot with a band, quite a seminal Australian band, and the flash I had just didn't work and I nearly died. And, I was just, I was there, but I had to supply those photos as well. And so I actually had to get a mate to help resurrect those photos into something that was fit. But, at the end of the day, I'm like, well, that band would never book me again, or they would never book me because those photos are not great. So I suppose I haven't really covered off is I never studied. I didn't go to photography school. I didn't go to art school, any of those. I learned on the job. So all the things I've learned through doing, which is how I learn. But it's maybe not the most sensible idea because if you mess up along the way, well, you kind of burnt that. But also, I wouldn't do it any other way. And every time I think about going to, people like, you should go do your masters or whatever. And yeah, my partner's always like, that kind of thing will just kill you. Like it will kill your creativity. It'll shape you into something really different. So yeah, learning through doing has been great, but probably that's where a lot of the challenges are because you're winging it. yeah, but also that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's doing what you're comfortable with, but also, just sort of pushing boundaries that little bit. So it may be that one day all you do is flash photography. You'll be the next Bruce Gilden.
No, I'm good, thanks.
No. And I wonder, I mean, Bruce Gilden, because we've talked about Bruce before. I just noticed just now, actually, I've got a Bruce Gilden book on my shelf here, and it intrigued me when I saw it in the bookshop, but I've not picked it off the bookshelf since. And it's sort of, so for those who don't know, Bruce Gilden's photography, he, legendary photographer who puts flashes right in people's faces, and he has wide lenses and just has these really stark images of people caught out, caught off guard, surprised or whatever. And it's led to a lot of confrontations for him. And for me, that's something I don't really want in my life. And so when I think of you and your practice, with everything you've told us so far, going back to the idea of community, going back to the idea of sharing with friends, the connections you make, the joy and the fun you have, I guess to some extent, whilst flash photography might be required for some jobs, it might not necessarily fit your aesthetic, and your aesthetic being part of just the way you connect with other people.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Mm. Look, what I'd love to ask you, so we talked opportunity, lessons learned. Have you got any lessons that we might take away from what you've learned along the way so far?
I think I had a moment there when you talked about challenges again, and I thought the thing I should say is it is a really big challenge not knowing how an industry or a thing actually works. And you can't, other than going to school or even then, what do you actually learn about how it operates? I mean, sure, you learn some things, I'm absolutely no doubt, but how does it operate in the real world is, so every day you're navigating things for the first time, but a whole lot of stuff, you just don't know how to do them. Like, you don't know what's right, what's the ethics, and things happen all the time. You're like, oh, what am I supposed to do with that? It's sort of unrelenting about, especially in the online world, about what happens with your images. And something just happened again today. I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, like someone's taken a portrait I did and done a drawing out of it. And then this has happened before, but this is and it looks like their life, they're going to put that work on a T-shirt and sell it on Redbubble.
Oh,
I'm
no.
like, so now I have to, but that's the world. Like that, things like that happen all the time. Honestly, every day there's something, and that having to respond. And some days you're like, oh, I just can't be bothered. I just let it through the keeper, or maybe I'll deal with it tomorrow. But or maybe I'll just let it go altogether. And that is a real challenge in the work that we do. Lessons. Yeah. So. I have people ask me this quite a bit, I suppose, and I sort of tell them to not take it too seriously, to enjoy the moments that your life or that being a photographer or an artist affords you. A music photographer a pretty new music photographer asked me this a couple of weeks ago, and I just said, when you're in the pit and there's 9 photographers all pushing and shoving and kicking off and taking 500 photos of the same thing, just stop for a moment and stand there and have a look around you, enjoy it and go, oh my God, how cool is this, or feel it, just feel and have a look at the audience and have fun with it, take that moment, remember it. Yeah, because you never get that moment back. And really, there's no better way to see a gig, really. In my view, I'm like, I will not stand at the back of the gig anymore. I don't care. I will get to the front now. Whereas before, I wouldn't do that. It's like now, absolutely, you want to be at the front. Or for me anyway, I want to connect with the people on the stage. And I feel that as with a camera, you can do that. I can do that so much more easily. Relationship management is really important, depending on the type of work you do. Look, a big part of what I do is, and what's really important to me is around consent. And while I, as I said, take lots of candid shots and but finding that person on Instagram if you don't know them, trying to figure out who they are, connecting with them, and over time you build relationships and you know what they like and what they don't like. And most, you can make a misstep here, but by majority, the people that I share, because if you're photographing people who are famous or, have a platform, sure, they want that, but also you want them to like what you're going to put out in the world. So, yeah, how you navigate that behind the scenes and relationship management, I think is really important, or I find really important. And you want people to be connected with that work and like that work. I was going to say about doing your own thing and try not to focus too much on what other people are doing, because competition is often not a helpful thing, I find. And, I have the same thoughts in my head that I pretty much think most of us do in this photography world is, but I've learned that every time you see someone did something, you go, oh, how did they get to do that? Like, why didn't I get to do that? And this conversation is consistent, happens every day with so many people I know. And what I've learned over time is there are lots of people out there thinking the same thing about me or you or whatever, because we don't see all the machinations behind everything that happen. But there are so many opportunities out there in the world, and just about making them, and we're all just interested in, in different things, and we want to do them in, we'll all do them in a different way, ideally, I think. But just that trying just to do your own thing and not wasting your energy on what everyone else is doing. Yeah, that's, I think it's just such a time waster and energy waster. And yeah, it's a very competitive work, I would say. It's like there's all these rules that exist, or all these rules that don't exist in this kind of paradigm that do out, because they're doing in the rest, other industries, other jobs that you do.
Look, I think that's a wonderful place to end this week's podcast. Look, thank you so much, Suzanne. I think there's so much we can take away from what you've shared with us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was really enjoyable. It's always a great chance to think about your things and why you do them and how you got here and where you're going. It's a great time to reflect on all those things.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect, Curate, Create. I hope you found inspiration and insights that you can apply to your own creative work. For highlights and links, check out the show notes, and be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast player so you never miss an episode. Tune in next time as I continue to explore life and work in the arts.